It's not me. It's you, bestie. And she talked about her smelling like bread one more fucking time. It's like for men who listen to Joe Rogan. And let me tell you, the girlies who get it. And the ones that don't. And I am not a girlie who got it. How am I supposed to be in the headspace of romance and magic and fun and sexy times if I am irked and frustrated? I absolutely adore hearing people rant about the books that they hated. Even if I gave a book a 5-star. If I absolutely loved a book and someone was like, oh my God, how did you love that? I absolutely hated it. Tell me more. Tell me all about it. I want to hear your perspective because I just think it is so cool that even people, like some of these books on this list, people who I love and adore and I feel like I am so much like, absolutely loved. So getting to hear why a book was such a different experience for each person, fave. With that being said, we've got a lot of books to cover in this video of my worst / most disappointing books of 2023. Keeping in mind that reading is subjective, I love reading and I love talking about books, whether I loved it or hated it. I would rather viscerally hate a book than just feel meh about it. And I always think that watching these videos are so much fun. These are, I was gonna order them from like worst to most worst, hated to most hated, but a lot of them have varying reasons of why I didn't like them or I was disappointed by them, other than I would say the top 5. So we're gonna talk about all of the other books and then get into the top 5 and why those were especially letdowns, disappointments, hates, some could say. And shall we kick it off with what I would consider to be one of my biggest hot takes of this video? Sure, why not? Gideon the Ninth. Now, listen, no one wanted me to love this book more than me. No one thought that I would love this book more than I. Lesbian necromancers in space. Literally say no more. That was my dream. And then I read it and then I kept reading it and I was so fucking confused. So then I went back and I reread it and kept referencing the character list at the beginning, was still so fucking confused. Then, instead of lesbian necromancers in space, we were just spending time in kind of what I would describe as a locked room mystery in space with a necromancer who's a lesbian, where nothing is happening and you're just speculating about what could be happening and why these people could be going missing / dying. And I was so fucking confused. What book did you all read? Because I don't think I read the same one. And I can honestly say without a shadow of a doubt, oh my God, am I like getting hives from how stressed I am? The idea of talking about this does stress me out a little bit because I know people love this so much and I wanted to, and I don't get it. I truly think I read a different book because this cannot be what you all have been absolutely raving about. Cannot be it. The ending of it was good, but it wasn't good enough to make up for the hell I went through to get to that ending and how fucking boring it was the entire time and how needlessly confusing, and why did so many people's names start with the same letter? There were so many houses and people in these houses and the positions that they were in these houses, and they would get referred to as like their positions in these houses, and it was too much. It was too much. And no one is more disappointed in that than I. Trust me. And I felt so validated when I saw Katie Coulson's review on Goodreads when I was going in to put my review that I was really scared to put, because Katie Coulson didn't like this either and felt very similar to me. And I was like, okay, this makes me feel a little bit better that there is someone out there that has like similar reading taste to me that also felt the same way, because everyone else who has similar reading taste to me could not have loved it more. And I am left feeling so disappointed and confused and sad. And I don't really have anything else to say about that. The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. I know that I'm not in my mystery thriller era right now. And I took a step back from reading a lot of mystery thrillers because I could tell that a lot of them were just like, I wasn't giving any of them 5 stars. Confessions ended up on my favorite list last year, but that was it. None of them have been all-time favorites, and it's so hard to give a 5-star. But they're so easy to get through, and I like the act of reading them. So I don't think it's that. It's the book. It's not me. It's you, bestie. I can't even remember most of the plot of this book, other than the plot twist that I was like, this cannot possibly be the plot twist. What the hell? I think that we were following, I couldn't remember anyone's name, let me tell ya. I thought it was gonna be like this dangerous family that's out to get our main character, who she's like marrying into because she's marrying into this guy who's like super rich, and they're questioning her motives, and then suddenly she's in danger. Because the first chapter, we're left, like, it's flash forward to the future, where she's like bleeding out in the grand hall of this mansion of her soon-to-be husband's family, her in-laws. And you're like, what happened for you to get here? And then she's like, let me tell you, it's the most boring, convoluted, stupid story ever. Oh, and that plot twist? Not good. I was hating most of it, and then the plot twist came around and it just somehow made me hate it even more. The synopsis is talking about rules. I don't remember these rules. Listen carefully, do your research, trust no one, run for your life. Don't remember the context in which these came up. But basically she goes to meet the in-laws, the future in-laws to be. And the dad is like, hey, you're a writer. I've been like writing this thing. I've been recording myself talking, like saying what I've been writing, this novel, and I want you to read it and just listen to it and tell me what you think. And then on these tapes that he gives her, there ends up being what appears to be some sort of a confession to murder. And he has like some blackmail possibly on, he knows something. There's some reason that she's not wanting to tell anyone about what's on these tapes. And it was so stupid and boring and I hated it. Thank you. Next. Another mystery thriller book that this one I wanted to love so much. I've had it sitting on my shelves being like, this is going to be the mystery thriller book that I fuck with. And of course it's at the bottom of my stack here. So close. Yep, so far away. Oh, alrighty. That's The Collective by Allison Galen. The setup of this is a group of moms who are getting revenge for the death of their kids. Say no more, I'm in. Except that all of the action in this book happens off page because she's like, she joins this Facebook group of other grieving moms and then kind of ends up on the dark web in a group of moms that are like, hey, not only are we grieving, but we're like doing something about that. And if you would like to get your revenge, we would like to help you do that. And because of the nature of how this is written, so much is happening that just gets skipped over and then we get told about it on the next page. And then it's like, okay. And then the plot twist at the end was so ridiculous and stupid and I hated it so much. I did read this in one night. It was so easy to get through. I read it in like a few hours. So I will give it that I did not waste much of my time on this, but I kind of feel like I did because I spent so long building this up in my head for it to so quickly just crush those dreams. Transitioning to another hot take, I would put this in the category of most disappointing. And I know that this is a hot take because I know that there's a lot of people who I watched who put this on their favorite book of the year last year. And that was Notes on an Execution. And here's the thing, I think it was my expectations. And it wasn't the like I heard that you shouldn't go in with the expectation that this is a mystery thriller because it is more literary and slower paced than that. And then you could be disappointed. And the premise of this, the setup, is that we're following from different, like the perspective of the women who have been impacted by this man who's been convicted of being a serial killer, who's on death row. And you're reading from their perspective. So like his mom, one of the guards, and one of the cops, which I thought was an interesting choice. And this could be a me thing. It could be me expecting more out of this story than I should be, but I just was left feeling like everyone was talking about this, about how great of a job it did not glorifying and not trying to make us empathize with the guy, because that's very true, and giving these different perspectives on how people are impacted by the criminal justice system, which is true. But it also felt like it was done through such a white lens. There was like literally a couple of throwaway lines about the people who go missing and who looks for them and how often it's not Black girls and Native American girls who make the news and how many of them go missing that not a lot of people as a society end up caring about and whose voices don't get amplified. And then also literally a line about how Black men are disproportionately incarcerated and therefore disproportionately put on death row, and how oftentimes, because the way our criminal justice system is set up, there's a lot of people who are not guilty who are put on death row. And I just feel like if you're not going to explore those elements, it almost would have been better just not even mention it. Because instead, to me, it just came across as I recognize that you cannot talk about the criminal justice system in the United States without talking about race and class and privilege. And I'm going to say that, but I'm not going to talk about that anymore, because that's just too messy to be getting into. And you can feel how you want to feel about that, but I was just left feeling so disappointed, and maybe it was just that it just wasn't having the conversations that I was hoping for it to have. And it's not a nonfiction, it is a fiction book. Like it's a mystery-ish type book, but it just didn't sit right with me. I can see why people love it. I think that it would be a great book. Like I would recommend this to people who identify as liberal and could be moving more toward becoming more leftist. This is probably a book that I could recommend to those people. On a lighter note, a video that I can put very firmly in a list of what I would say is objectively worst books that I read, not necessarily most disappointing, and that's because I'd literally never heard of it, and that is The Girl in the Video by who? Don't know. He runs a podcast, I think, and I think he just literally wrote this book as a money grab. Michael David Wilson. It's supposed to be a horror book for the iPhone generation. It's not, okay? It is a horror novella that, to me, screamed racism. To me, screamed misogyny. I couldn't even tell you what the plot of this was. I think that there's a guy who's he opens up a spam email. Who the fuck clicks a link from a random email that they don't even recognize. It's not even like it was disguised as being an email that he would recognize, and then gets this like virus, but then it ends up being that like it seems like they're able to just access his entire life, and they're sending him these videos that could be incriminating. The twist I thought was in poor taste, one could say. I don't know why this exists. I literally only read it because I was reading horror novellas for that video and I saw it at the library and I thought, oh, horror book for the iPhone generation, this could be good. And I'm starting to learn that I have to be very careful. I have to have a reason to trust men. Like this, not men in general, but when it comes to horror books, if I'm reading a horror book by a man, I need to have already established some trust, because otherwise I just don't trust men to write horror. I don't. That book was so bad, and it is the one that like irks me when I think about it, because I don't think there is no redeeming it in my eyes. It's not a popular one. You probably weren't gonna read it anyway, but just in case you see it at your local library and think, that looks like a short novella. I could be the iPhone generation. I don't know what the fuck that means, but you could be. Maybe this is for me. It's not for you. It's like for men who listen to Joe Rogan, but say that they just listen to him because like they like that he has some good ideas and it's just like a little entertaining. We've entered full ranty, sassy Lex, I see. One that's less ranty, but it was just so disappointing for me, especially considering how much I liked the first book in this series, was As Good as Dead, which is the last book in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. And the thing is that I loved the first half of this book, and I even loved the twist. Like there's a twist in here where there's a big tone shift and like something happens that you are like, what? Did this just happen? We're going there now? Okay. And it wasn't even necessarily that bothered me. I was here for that part. And I think that sometimes that's what loses people, is that tone shift that happens here. But for me, it was mostly just like the actual ending of this book and where it went and how disjointed it felt from the person that we had learned our main character to be at that point in time and the decisions that she was making. And it just felt like Holly Jackson had an idea in her mind of where she wanted the ending to go, and then she made our character do things to get her there. Not that she followed where the decisions our main character would be taking would lead her. And because this was so well, like this is a YA murder mystery series that was so well done, especially in that first book. There's multimedia elements to this. The audiobooks are so well done. It's such a quick read. Like I think I read each one of these books in like a day, like over the course of 3 days, a book a day. And I was loving it. But it also like tackles so many important themes of misogyny and racism and how corrupt our criminal justice system is and who gets listened to and whose voices get amplified, how we respond to victims, especially women who are victims of sexual assault, and how often they don't get believed. And I love all of those things, and I think that they were mainly done so well in this. But it was just so disappointing to see the series wrapped up in the way that it was, just the execution of that ending that made it that As Good as Dead wasn't a bad book. I enjoyed most of it. It was just that it went downhill so quickly, and I was so sad about that. And who knows, maybe if I had read this at a different time, I would have felt differently about it. The next one also might be an unpopular opinion because I know the girlies who love this, and I tried so hard, and that is Blood Mercy by Vela Roth. This is a Kindle Unlimited book, specifically Kindle Unlimited romantasy book, and I'm starting to think that maybe those just aren't for me, and that's because I, just my humble opinion, believe that every single one of them is so fucking overwritten, which get your coin. Okay, on Kindle Unlimited, authors are paid based on pages that are read. So obviously, you are therefore incentivized to write longer books, to under-edit, and to keep people hanging on so that you can get more money, because if your book is longer, you're gonna make more money off of each person who gets through the entire book. I cannot tell you how fucking bored I was, and I only kept going because I kept coming back. I kept going back to Goodreads. It was my touchstone, was the Goodreads reviews of all of the people who I follow being like, I love this book. I can't stop thinking about this book. 5 stars. Oh my God. Love this series. This is incredible. And I was like, okay, something is going to happen. This is going to be worth the 150 pages we have spent doing absolutely nothing. Then I was like, okay, it's going to be worth the next 150 pages that we've spent talking in a garden about nothing, doing absolutely nothing. Okay, it's going to be worth the next 150 pages that we spent talking in a garden about absolutely nothing, doing absolutely nothing. The end. Awesome. Okay. Well, actually there was probably like another 300 pages and then it was the end. And I will admit that I skimmed the last 150 because I just couldn't do it. And I can tell, but I skimmed enough to know that nothing was happening and that we were getting some vague plot. Like they were trying to throw in some political intrigue and it just wasn't happening because we had spent so long between our two main love interests gazing at each other in fields. They're not supposed to be together, and literally the only reason they're together is because the girl wears soap instead of perfume. And the guy is like, oh, that's so hot and so sexy that she's not like other girls and she doesn't wear perfume. She just smells like soap. And let me tell you, Monty's line in the review that says, sure, you have to adjust to the fact that the only reason a romance is going to happen is because of proper hygiene, but I suppose that is a better option than the inverse. Iconic. Loved. I did not care about the characters, did not care about the romance, could not tell you a single point of the plot or the magic system. And I didn't read this that long ago. It's been less than 6 months. It wasn't something that I read like at the beginning of the year. I don't get it. If you loved this, I love that for you. It is a slow fucking burn. Oh my God. But I can love a slow burn if I am loving that angst and the tension and there's some worlds. I mean, this is a fantasy. We've got like vampire adjacent creatures and like people with magic. There is magic happenings. Nothing was happening and nothing was being described either. So I was just left wondering what the fuck we were all doing. And this was like truly the book that's making me think that I just can't do Kindle Unlimited romantasy because it just irks me and makes me frustrated. And then how am I supposed to be in the headspace of romance and magic and fun and sexy times if I am irked and frustrated because it's taking so long? Okay, one more book until we get to my top 5 of most irked books of 2023. And that is A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. I have tried to read a Samantha Downing book before, whatever this one is, can't remember. Good for You? Good for Her? No, no. I think there's a G and an F word in there somewhere. For Your Own Good. See? Got there. And I DNF'd it because I was like, I don't, like, maybe I'm just not in the right headspace for this. And I think that possibly that could be it because from what I'm hearing, a lot of people who have loved and given 5 stars to Samantha Downing absolutely hated A Twisted Love Story. And let me tell you, I could not really tell you what this book was about much at all. It was a mystery thriller, kind of, but I remember thinking, where's the mystery? Where's the thrill? Because it's 2 people who are in a toxic relationship, a will they, won't they kind of vibe. And they have this deep, dark secret in their past that's like keeping them connected and kind of they're like hanging over each other's heads. But then I don't remember if like, it was so fucking obvious what happened the entire time that I was like, is this supposed to be a plot twist? Or if the plot twist was just so bad that I was like, this can't possibly be it. It like wasn't enough to justify why they were still together, why they were still in each other's lives. They treated this like it was the biggest deal of all time and it like really wasn't. Like not in comparison to how much they blew this shit up in their minds. And to us and to the readers. I think that there was supposed to also be, if I remember correctly, like these weird sexual tension between them. And you obviously weren't supposed to be rooting for them because like they're not good people and they're not good together. But I just didn't understand what the point of this was. And it was so bad and it was just so fun to rant to people because I think that this was one of the Literally Dead book club picks this year. And I believe from what I remember, a lot of people felt similarly. 12 out of 10. Would not recommend. Okay, let's move on to my top 5 worst books of the year, which could also be described as my hottest takes. And therefore, just one more reminder that if you loved these books, I love that for you so much. A lot of these I desperately wish that I had. And I actually own 4 out of the 5. Number 5 absolutely fits in the category of, if this is your favorite book, and I know that it is a lot of people's favorite books of all time, just know that I wish I was you. I tried so hard to be you. I bought not only a physical version of this book, specifically the UK version of this book because I thought it was prettier, but then I was getting so frustrated and my arms were starting to hurt trying to hold open this book that I also then purchased the Kindle version of this book because I thought maybe the fact that I was frustrated with the reading experience was affecting my enjoyment of the actual book and I didn't want that to happen. The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I wanted to love this. Everything about this should point toward Lexa's vibes. Lexa absolutely eating this shit up. It is no plot, all vibes. Some argue it's character-based. I would argue it's very much not. Like, yes, we are following a few very specific characters, but I don't feel like I ever really get to know them because of the vagueness and not whimsy, but like headiness of this writing and the way that it's told kind of in like, there's like these disjointed stories throughout the like main story that you think are gonna connect and then they don't really. And this just feels like the perfect book to have read in a high school English class where you had to dissect like themes and motifs, because I just felt like I wasn't getting it. And let me tell you, the girlies who get it. And the ones that don't. And I am not a girly who got it. This is sold as, like, the plot of this is Zachary Rollins goes into a library, discovers a book that has a story from his childhood that, like, no one would possibly know. And then he's like, why is this story about me in this book? And then it goes on this journey involving discovering this Starless Sea, this, like, other world kind of thing, and magic. And it's very dream-like. It's told kind of like a dream. You are just kind of meandering through the plot. The plot isn't actually happening. And I wish I could tell you anything else about the plot, but I couldn't. I don't think that there is much. I literally did not know at, like, the 90% mark if this was gonna be a 1-star or a 5-star, because I was really hoping that we were, like, I was taking notes, because I was like, okay, all of this is gonna come back around, and I'm just gonna be left thinking, oh my God, this was so brilliant. You pulled off so many connections and reveals and things that I didn't even see coming, and that now I can see these connections, and now I'm gonna wanna reread this in, like, this whole other light. No, if you're waiting for this to have a point, good luck, okay? Good luck. That being said, I get why you, like, if you loved it, I get it, and I wish that I were you. And it had potential, and then I just did not. 1-star. Wow. And I was so disappointed because I really, really thought that I was gonna love this. Number 4 is also a biggest disappointment, and also such a hot take, and that's The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I read this for my reading, like, a Pisces zodiac birthday vlog that I did. So much, like, I thought I was gonna love this so much that I read this for my birthday vlog for, like, my birthday. Like, I wanted to associate this with my 27th birthday, because I was like, we got sapphics and dragons. What more could I need? I can tell you what, more sapphics and more dragons. This is so unnecessarily long. The plot felt so convoluted, and it felt like we were spending literally 700 pages for all of, like, I'm not even exaggerating. I think all of the action starts, like, here. This is the end. And really it's like, because we've got some tie back, so, like, it's like this much here. And at that point, I was just like, what the fuck? So I have the hot take that I think the entire time I was reading this, I was like, the story she wanted to tell is the history of this world. Like, we're getting told what has happened in the past to get us to where we are now, why there are dragons and these dragon riders, and what the political maneuverings are, and yada, 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 because of this, like, big thing that happened in their history. And I was like, this is the story she wanted to tell. Like, that history, like, what happened, not this. It feels like she started writing this and then was like, oh, I need, like, a history and a lore to this world, and then started writing that and then was like, oh my God, that's really interesting. But I've already invested in this story here, which I then stand by even more, because A Day of Fallen Night, which is the prequel to this, is the next book that came out, and it is that story. So I do think that there is a chance that I could enjoy that, and that is the book for me, and that this just wasn't, because this just felt like so much word vomiting of world building, and being, like, told a history that I didn't care about because I had no connection to the characters. There was one character in here that I loved, and I wanted so much more of her perspective. It's the girl with the dragons, obviously. And I just felt like we didn't get enough of her, and I would have preferred so much more from her. But with this being said, this is one of my partner's favorite books of the year. So I get it, okay? And I get how people could love this, and we talk about this a lot because they absolutely loved this, and I don't get but get how they did, and they don't get but get how I hated it. With that being said, if this is also one of your favorites, I love that for you. I wanted it to work for me. I just felt like it was the biggest waste of time ever, and maybe I'll consider listening to the audiobook of A Day of Fallen Night, mainly just because I want to know if I'm right, and I want to know if that's more interesting, and if that is the story for me, and also the story I think she actually wanted to tell. Number 3, worst book. And if I didn't make it clear, oh no, this is a little bit torn. I did not mean to do that. I think Willow knocked it over. I might have just torn it a little bit. We're working up to my most worst book. Kind of. I feel like all of these I got rants about. This was for sure my first worst book of the year, because it's the first book that I read, and that is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. Where do I even begin to tell you how much I was so disappointed by this book? Keeping in mind, romance, not my genre. I kind of gave up on it this year and didn't read a lot of it. I'm still holding out hope. I have, like, a shelf full of romance books that I'm hoping one day will work for me, but this had so many things that I thought were going to work for me, because the only romance that I've ever really liked that was strictly romance was queer. So I was like, okay, this is queer, fantastic. We've got a butch character, love that. This has a fake marriage, fake engagement trope, but plot twist, it's not between the two love interests, it's between one of the love interest and the other one's brother. And I was like, okay, that could be interesting. But instead what it led to is just a lot of time spent seeing these two bicker and not like each other and miscommunicating, and not a lot of time actually together or built, like seeing why they liked each other in the first place. I couldn't fucking tell you. We keep getting flashbacks to like the Christmas that they met last year where it was just like magic and sparks and amazing, and they had this one beautiful night together, and then everything went wrong the next morning. What was that plot twist? Fucking hated it. And then it's like supposed to be told like one of our main characters is a webcomic designer. So those chapters are her webcomics, but we're not shown the webcomics. We're just like told them. Why did we not include the webcomics? That would have been such a cool addition. Like, why can I not see that? Also, this character, the butch one, not at all how she's described. Not at all. Obviously not the artist's fault, but someone needed to answer for that. And then this entire time I'm left thinking, this girl is like the most sane one here and the one who at least has done the least wrong, but she is getting blamed for everything in this book. And all of the other characters, messy, 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 except for Mima. I think that's what they call her, whoever the grandma is. She's the only redeeming part of this book. I loved her. I was so excited about the representation. We have a demisexual character in there and she talks about what her experience is like with that. I wanted to love this and absolutely thought it was horrible. And I don't get it. And why did we spend all of this time with people who seemingly couldn't get along and couldn't communicate and didn't like each other? And if she talked about her smelling like bread one more fucking time. My camera's gonna die before I can finish this. We'll go over number 2 quickly because it really wasn't a disappointment. I had no expectations. Actually, my only expectation is that I wasn't gonna like it, and then somehow I liked it even less than I thought I was gonna like it. And that's My Darling Girl. If you watched my Goodreads video, you might have seen me talk about this. And I knew at the time, I was like, this is gonna be one of my worst books of the year. I think it's one of objectively the worst books that I've ever read. Maybe the trope just wasn't for me. I never would have read this in the first place because I went into it saying that I thought I wasn't gonna like it and that I had no reason to think that. It was just a feeling. And I don't think at all that impacted my enjoyment of this. It was just that it was so poorly written that I kept wondering how this got published and like how the idea of this, even the concept and where the plot went, got published in 2023. And I have heard from people that the author in this was trying to do something different and that a lot of her other books are not like this and that they're a lot different. So I'm trying my hardest to not let that impact going forward if I would ever read anything from Jennifer McMahon, because I know that so many people who really like her also didn't like this book. This is like the trope of our main character. She had a really abusive mom, does have a really abusive mom. She grows up, she's now an adult. Her mom is on her deathbed and she's like, my last dying wish is for me to come live with you. And she's like, okay. The husband, I think his name was Steven. I don't remember. Fuck him. Hated him from the very beginning. The decisions that are made make no sense. I think that the author was trying to draw a parallel between being gaslit, feeling like someone is a completely different person one moment than they are the next, but it didn't work with how, like, where the plot went. The ending was stupid, in my opinion. And I literally laughed at how much I hated this multiple times. And if she mentioned letting out a breath you didn't know you were holding one more goddamn time. Whoa. Well, it just blows my mind that this was written and published in October of 2023. It felt like something, like a thriller you would have read from 2005, before people wanted more out of their mystery and thriller books and like thought about the implications of the tropes that you're using. And I just don't understand. With that being said, my number 1 disappointment in the book that I could and do rant for hours about, Iron Flame. I had mixed feelings on Fourth Wing. I did record a reading vlog for it and then just never posted it because it was just like a little bit disjointed. And I went into the reading vlog expecting that I was either gonna give Fourth Wing a 1-star or a 5-star. And then I ended up just feeling meh about it. Like, if you loved it, I get it. If you hated it, I get it. I think that in so many ways it was so poorly written and under-edited and so clearly rushed, but I also understand the appeal and I understand why so many people love it, and I love that it got so many people back into reading. And I get that it is kind of like the Twilight of 2023. I know it's gonna be one of those that we look back on in 10 years and we're like, what the fuck were we reading? What? I'm sorry, did she just throw in that you have to have magic to use pens and that everyone without magic writes with a quill and ink and that's like literally something she wrote into the magic system? Okay, sure. But it pulls people in. You've got that romantic-y vibe. The plot, so I get it. Then I got one of my partners into Fourth Wing. They really did they liked Fourth Wing. I think they said that they would have given it like a 3.5. I can't remember. They liked it enough to go into Iron Flame. And I was like, okay, I will buddy read Iron Flame with you and this will be a fun time, which was true, except here's what ended up happening. I got 20% in and then I was like, bestie, I'm struggling. I bought the audiobook because I was like, I think I need the audiobook. Then I was like, oh my God, this audiobook is awful. And I don't understand because it's like a very well loved and used audiobook narrator, but the way that she voices the dragons literally made me laugh out loud. So I couldn't listen to the audiobook because I thought that was impacting my enjoyment. And then I was just left at 22% with an update on Goodreads that said, I don't know about this one, bestie. And then it took me 3 weeks to get back into this. And I literally only read it because I was like, I am finishing this book. I want to be able to talk about this and I need to know. I need to know if this gets better. People are claiming that it does. I did not think it did. Oh my God, our main character. I'm not gonna talk to you about the plot of this because that would spoil the plot for Fourth Wing. I'm sure you've heard about Fourth Wing. We've got dragons, we've got a dragon writing school, we've got a main character and a love triangle between childhood best friend and shadow daddy, kid of the rebellion, whatever. Who will come on top? I have no idea. I can get down with the vibes. This, in my opinion, if I loved Fourth Wing, if I was one of those girlies that stood by Fourth Wing and then this is the bullshit that was given to me, I'd be pissed. This was so clearly, in my opinion, rushed. Like we saw that there were so many issues with people's copies of the books, which obviously isn't the author's fault. This came out like 6 months after the first book came out, and now she's waiting a year to write the third book, and then I thought this was only gonna be a trilogy, but it's supposed to be 5 books long. Please, God, no. Where the plot goes in these first 2 books could have been 1 book. We just spend so much time with absolutely nothing happening, and our main character, our girl could only come up with 1 conflict for the love interest, and she held on fucking tight. And then I think her editor was like, bestie, hey, we need more than 1 conflict, because if Violet talks about trust 1 more goddamn time, I'm gonna scream. So then she was like, okay, I've got the trope of unjustified miscommunication, distrust. What other conflict trope can I incorporate? Oh, weirdly displaced anti-feminist jealousy trope. That makes no sense when you know how these love interests are intertwined. I digress. The smutty scenes, not well written, and few and far between. At least there was like one a little bit early on in this book, but not that great. Okay. The plot, missing. When the action starts, it just felt like everything I wanted to read in this, all of the action points lasted 2 pages or were literally a throwaway line. We get this reveal of this like epic thing that one of the characters did that's like so badass and so like, oh my God, like what a moment. And we get told about it. They're like, oh yeah, I did this. That would have been like, that could have been so cool. And right before that, there was this moment, this like plot point that she put in here that I was like, oh my God, like I want more. This is making me feel so much for this character in this moment. This is dark and hard and heavy, and you could have strung it out for 100 pages and I would have been so invested. And it lasted for like 2 pages. And then the fight scenes last not that long, and most of it happens off page. That being said, I did in fact pre-order the special edition copy of this, which is not that great. The Fourth Wing special edition had like cute stencils. This is just black and it's kind of messed up in spots. But here we are. Miss Rebecca, I have thoughts. Okay. And then I'm just left wondering, for all of the people who gave this 5 stars, did you love this book? Or did you love Fourth Wing so much that you were just holding on to the feelings and the hope that you had for that book and carried it over to this one? Not invalidating if you really did love it. I just kind of wonder if that played a little bit of a role in this. Is like that hype and those feelings that you had from Fourth Wing, which I do think is objectively better written. So that is it. With that, let me know what you thought about all of these books down in the comments below. What were some of your worst books of the year? Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!